ॐ ह्रीं ऋतं त्वमचलो गुणजित् गुणेभ्यः नातं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीन बन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्तलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदयं न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसा त्वयि तृप्त तृष्णां रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मर्त्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्मि नाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी शान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं तु अशरणो जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ सर्वमङ्गल माङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टिस्थिति विनाशानां शक्तिभूता Gato Dinarto Paritrana Parayane Sarvas Charati Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Jayanarayani Namostute Jayanarayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute. Jai Mahamai ki Jai, Jai Bhagawan Sri Ramakrishna Dev ki Jai, Jai Swamiji Maharaj ji ki Jai.
Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharane. So we had just started this lecture by Vivekananda, God in Everything. And essentially the idea that was conveyed last time was that most of almost all organized religions have as a founding principle, basic principle, a transcendent reality which is given different names, mostly a personal god by the theistic religions. But in the more impersonal side, Vedanta calls it Brahman, Madhyamaka Buddhism calls it Shunyata. And today, in the more scientific parlance, it's the same thing that is called consciousness. Not something beyond, not something mystical, mysterious, speculative, but something that is very tangible, or well, not tangible, I would say, but something that's very immediate. It is in and through our consciousness that we see, know, hear everything. But how do we catch hold of it? This is the paradox that one is up against when viewed from the perspective or the lens of Vedanta or Madhyamaka. Yes? I mean, or this idea of consciousness. It doesn't really matter what school of thought, because this is a kind of a universal human issue, universal to all human beings, universal to all conscious beings. The fact that we see, know, hear, etc., presupposes a principle of knowledge, which we call consciousness. But traditional religions, dualistic religions, the way it's put forward is that there's an attempt to address a crucial existential problem. Here, the existential problem that is being addressed is the ethical one. Why is there good? Why is there evil? This is the basic notion that comes up in the human mind. Not when they are essentially at the level of, going around in the jungle, for instance. But as soon as human beings start getting together in a society, you need norms to keep people together. And this leads to this notion of what is good and what is not. Essentially, in a fairly simple, maybe oversimplified, but certainly a basic starting point, that which is good is something that conduces to the welfare of many, of this larger thing that we call society, which means that the individual is supposed to subjugate its personal wants for this larger cause that we call society. This idea evolves, and unless somebody posits some external agency outside of us and spins a story about it, the usual outgoing human mind does not grasp this universal principle. It's this larger idea of something that is universal to members of a society that leads human beings to conceive of a God. Yeah. And the first, so there are these, and then one starts hunting for, there is this first hypothesis, so to speak. There is this mystery in the world, and there are this us living in a society, and we want to bind it up together so that as an organic whole, society functions well. And the best story to make this possible is this notion of a God. Call it by whatever name you like in different societies, in different cultures. But once that hypothesis is in place, it is good enough to keep society in order to some extent, which is why we have police systems, we have systems where people do one work, some other people do another work, there's a division of labor, etc., etc. But then, the mind that really wants the truth behind it starts looking at it from a much deeper, much more elemental perspective. And so it's not satisfactory for such an inquiring mind that wants above all to know the truth. It's not good enough for such people to be told that such and such priest or such and such group of people have said that so and so, such and such thing is true. And the greatest exemplar in recent times is Vivekananda himself, who did not accept something merely because his Guru Ramakrishna had told him this, because he really wanted to know what it was, to know it to be true for oneself. If in that process of inquiry, this naive notion of a God that one starts off with is found wanting, then so be it. What one does is scrapes away the prejudices, the social norms that have been imposed on this great concept to get at the truth up for oneself and for one's own complete satisfaction. The quest then is for truth, not some word, not some story that has been spun around this hypothetical notion of a God. Returning to the history of the evolution of this concept, one goes back to society when it was trying to bind itself together so that as a species, so that as a group, we function better. And then those who were in power would spew out the story of an almighty God, which was initially localized in different tribes. So one tribe had one particular kind of God, another tribe another. This was good enough so long as there was a small number of human beings interacting with each other. But even there was this notion of a good, of something that was good and something that was not, something that was evil. But after progress, where now the world has become kind of a global village, where we are in a position to interact with human beings more or less anywhere in the world, this idea persists. And we ask ourselves, well, yes, true enough that there is this good and there is this evil that we have to deal with every moment of our lives, every day. What is the way out of the bad, out of the not good, out of the evil? This is an ethical concern, and it is born only in the mind of the social animal that the human being is. Religions give a certain kind of a solution. Most of the time, the traditional religions give some injunctions. To the inquiring mind, that is not satisfactory. This unsatisfactory nature of the traditional religious answer is brought up in the next paragraph. What do they say? Oh, never mind that you die, never mind that you suffer, hereafter, in some I'm tempted to say fictitious heaven, about which we have no proof, no conviction, there one will be joyful, and so suffer gladly. At best, this sounds like the story of some powerful people to keep some human beings who do not have that power under their command by spinning certain stories. Essentially saying that what is real, what is true, what is good is something that is beyond, something that is transcendent. This standpoint, the unsatisfactory nature of this standpoint, is first analyzed by Vivekananda here. The first impression we get of the advice given by religions is that we had better terminate our existence. To the question, how to cure the evils of life, the answer apparently is give up life. It reminds one of the old story. A mosquito settled on the head of a man, and a friend, wishing to kill the mosquito, gave it such a blow that he killed both man and mosquito. The remedy of evil seems to suggest a similar course of action. Life is full of ills, the world is full of evils. That is a fact no one who is old enough to know the world can deny. But what is the remedy proposed by all the religions? The problem one does not have to be particularly religious to recognize. But religions, traditional religions, organized religions claim to know various answers to this difficult question. But when you ask questions of the answers that are given, very often the shallowness of those answers become apparent. This is not to indict these answers, but to encourage ourselves to probe deeper. Not necessarily accept a religious answer as the be-all and end-all, as the ultimate solution to these problems. But what is the remedy proposed by all the religions? That this world is nothing. This is really a philosophical way of saying that, look, if you are suffering, suffer gladly, you will enjoy in some heaven or some fictitious place. Beyond this world is something which is very real. Here comes the difficulty. The remedy seems to destroy everything. How can that be a remedy? Counters common sense. Is there no way out then? The Vedanta says that what all the religions advance is perfectly true, but it should be properly understood, which means remove the priestcraft and the politics of religion from it. Yeah? This encrustation is a seeking of power. Throw it out. It has nothing whatsoever to do with it. People who use it are merely conflating politics and religion for their own personal benefit. Dump that, because it has nothing whatsoever to do with the core religious quest. Often it is misunderstood because the religions are not very clear in their meaning. This is exactly what gets religions their bad name. Lack of clarity, obfuscation. When you ask questions, they say, oh, if you don't believe this, you will go to hell. So and so God will be angry with you. Ridiculous nonsense like that. What we really want is head and heart combined. The heart is great indeed. It is through the heart that come the great inspirations of life. I would 100 times rather have a little heart and no brain than be all brains and no heart. Life is possible, progress is possible for him who has heart, but he who has no heart and only brains dies of dryness. At the same time, we know that he who is carried along by his heart alone has to undergo many ills, for now and then he is liable to tumble into pitfalls. And this is it's exactly these pitfalls that give rise to people of one religion trying to prove that they are superior to people belonging to another. Most of the time it takes the form of denigrating others. It's really a certain insecurity of the petty ego, nothing more, nothing less. See, unless I say that I belong to this group that is somehow intrinsically superior to that other group to whom somebody else belongs, then I can't quite feel very happy about myself. Perhaps, most of the time this is due to lack of self-awareness. So one's personal glory is born out of, I belong to such and such group, which is better than all these other groups, therefore I am superior. That's what it is. That's the real psychology behind it. It's very petty, very superficial. Yeah. So this is where the precise pitfall really lies. Yeah. The combination of heart and head is what we want. This is really the solution to this problem. I do not mean that a man should compromise his heart for his brain or vice versa, but let everyone have an infinite amount of heart and feeling, and at the same time, an infinite amount of reason. Is there any limit to what we want in this world? Is not the world infinite? There is room for an infinite amount of feeling, and so also for an infinite amount of culture and reason. Let them come together without limit. Let them be running together, as it were, in parallel lines, each with the other. The problem has been posed, the solution has been given. The problem is essentially how to deal with this ethical duality. This particular lecture starts off with the problem of ethical duality. The duality between good and bad. And the solution proposed both by dualistic religions and by Vedanta is essentially say that, look, this world is not real per se. There is this bunch of verses by Shankaracharya, where at the end of every verse he says, Atakim, Atakim, what next, what next? So when one says that this world is not real, what does one really mean? And the answer really is that as it appears, this is not the end of a quest for truth. One needs to go beyond. Not just this. Not just this. See, Sa Esha Neti Neti Atma. This is there in the Brihadaranyaka. Most of the people who casually read Vedanta or who have not really gotten into it or look at it as some kind of philosophical intellectual exercise for gymnastics, they omit this particular point. It's not some philosophical system that is being talked about here. It is a tangible, practical way of looking at things that one is being encouraged to do. So not just this is supposed to express a subjective dissatisfaction at seeing the world and accepting it as ultimately true, which means thwart this faculty of enquiry. That's the position, that this world is true as it is, which means don't inquire, don't ask questions. Swallow without enquiry words that are thrown at you, doctrines that are thrown at you, dogmas that are thrown at you. The other side is to enquire. And the starting point of this enquiry can only be brought about by a sense of dissatisfaction. If one is comfortable and well-fed and has no wants, the spirit of enquiry would never arise. So the real content of these religious doctrines is not that throw away the world, there's a transcendent reality, which we have no clue about. But rather, this that is being told to you, this world that is appearing to us with all its mixture of good and evil, is not the end of the story, is not the end of the path. If you are feeling dissatisfied, enquire, seek deeper. This is the real meaning of this neti neti, saesha neti neti atma. What is the core reality of this world? There, the answer is saesha neti neti atma. It is not just this, it's not just this. Take this faculty of knowledge, faculty of enquiry, there in every human heart. Nurture it, cultivate it, use it to understand the world. And in so doing, one understands the essential nature of oneself as well. The culmination of the enquiry is when this instrument of enquiry has found final fulfillment. There is the subject, what we call ourselves. There is the object, which is the world, and the process that goes between the two in order to search for truth is this process of enquiry. This is the action, the relationship between the subject and the object. Then logically, when can it culminate? When can such a thing finish? It is only when there is nothing left to enquire into. Logically, what does that mean? That means the enquirer, the enquired, and the process of enquiry which goes between these two. This triad has vanished. There are fairly fancy terms in Vedanta for this. It's called Triputi. The subject, the object, and the relationship between them. Triputi Laya. See, these are very often abstract things that we read in books, but really, this is all it means. Take that process, that faculty of enquiry, the quest for knowledge, the thirst for knowledge, for truth, and press on into one's own, the core of one's being, into the fundamentals of this world around us. And the culmination can only be when this faculty has not been dulled, but has found its complete fulfillment. And such a fulfillment can only be found when there is no second to enquire into, which means when duality has vanished. This vanishing of this subject, object, and the process of enquiry, this is called Triputi Laya, which means the way to it is to keep the mind alert and enquiring till it dissolves. And that state, when one speaks about it, the Upanishads are ecstatic. It comes out in the form of ecstatic poetry, the joy and bliss of that. Yada sarvam atmaiva bhut tat kenakam pashyet, kenakam jigret, kenakam manvita, kenakam vijaniyat. There's again Brihadaranyaka. So this is when all has become one, then by what indeed shall one hear another, see another, know another? This is the rough translation. The ethical dimension of this is also there in the Ishopanishad. Essentially, how would, when this duality has vanished, when one has realized one's oneness with all of existence, the other in particular, basically the foundation of the human being has been caught hold of and identified. And that has been recognized as one's own core being. Then where will one find the facility, the faculty to hate another? To try to prove oneself superior to another? To indulge in all these petty mental games that we keep on playing, essentially to assert our own supremacy over this misconceived other. So, here let's get back to this particular essay, this particular lecture, and delve a little more into this statement that the world is nothing. Yeah? In Vedanta 2, when it says that what these things are perfectly true, but it should be properly understood, what is being hinted at is this fundamental statement, Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. But mostly dualists who do not really catch hold of the meaning of this word Mithya translate this world, unfortunately, as this world is false and consciousness is true. That is a unhappy rendering because it needs to be understood at much greater depth. The word mithya does not mean something that is false. Sanskrit is a precise language. The derived meanings in vernacular should not be imposed on a language which is precise. The word mithya comes from myth, with this hasanta at the end of the tha. What it means is mixture. A mixture of something that is real and something that is unreal. This is the real meaning of mithya. In the first line of Shankara's Adhyasa Bhashya to the Brahma Sutras, he makes this very clear. Satya and Anrita. The correct Sanskrit for something which is false is Anrita. Yeah? That's the correct word. It's the correct Sanskrit word for something that's false. Satya is true. Satya Anrite Mithuni Kritya. Mixing up the real and the unreal. Mixing up the true and the false, we proceed in our day-to-day lives. Ahamidam mamaisham iti naisargikoyam lokavyavahara. Lokavyavahara. Day-to-day dealing with the world. There is this confusion. There is this confusion of this real and the unreal, and this is what is called mithya. So when we say, when the Vedantin says Jagat Mithya, what he really means is that our present understanding, it's a true statement that our present understanding of ourselves and the world is confused. And it is a confusion between the real and the unreal. And so what is required to essentially get out of this confusion? Analysis, clarity. Show the light on this twilight of darkness between, this twilight area between the truth and the falsehood, so that the truth shines in its own light. It's encouraging a quest, not a doctrine. It's essentially a statement like, if you are really interested in getting to know the truth, then look at the source of that obstructs it. That which obstructs it is exactly this confusion in our heads, in our minds. This is called adhyasa. There's a polarity, there's this conscious principle which superimposes itself on that which is not conscious, namely this body. And the body superimposes its qualities on this conscious, so that we get this idea, I am the body. Does not withstand reasoning, but the instincts are too powerful, so they hold on to this confusion. So when one says that the world is mithya, not false, one should understand that as a statement of fact. If we do just a little bit of introspection, we see that our much vaunted vanity about things about which we claim to be certain are only statements which say that there is a little less confusion about them. That's all. And literally, this is the word mithya. What about the word jagat? What does the word jagat come from in Sanskrit? It comes from the same root, dhatu, verb, which means motion, gam. Gamyate iti jagat. That which moves is the world. That which moves is the jagat. That which is changing, that's the connotation. That which is changing is jagat. So what is the quest for? The quest is for sat, that which is. What is that opposed to? That which is contrasted with that which changes. And that which is unchanging, not caught within the framework of time. And so it almost becomes a tautology. Jagat is that which changes, and Sat is that which is unchanging. So that which changes cannot be that which is changeless. It's almost a tautology. It's a very simple logical deduction, nothing else. This simple fact, which our minds and brains fail to grasp immediately in a very tangible way and translate it into action on a day-to-day basis, is caused by this confusion which dictates our day-to-day lives. In an earlier lecture, this is exactly what was called Maya. So, the solution is not to chop the world off, not to beat the person over the head so that the mosquito and the head are both crushed, but to start looking at the world through these new eyes, to cultivate this buddhi, this world view, through this process of enquiry, by this earnest seeking of truth. Because so long as this spirit of seeking of the truth is there, driving us, then no intermediate stop is going to satisfy us. The mind will need to go till the end of this enquiry. So the fuel, the energy, comes from this personal desire that I want to know the truth above everything else. That desire fuels what? Fuels this process of enquiry. That desire for truth is exactly what is called heart in this context. Why? Because that's a feeling. And the process through which a little bit of enquiry says, okay, the other person and I are not different. So de-recognition of difference is exactly what allows one to identify with another. In neutral terms, this is called empathy. In the language of dualistic religions, this is exactly what is called love. So it is through this enquiry, fueled by a desire for truth, that we find a combination of the head and the heart. One wants unity. This is the same faculty expressing itself in two ways. One wants unity, even more so universality. which means my existence is not special. It is there in every being that is. At the same time, the intellect provides the cutting edge. It's the combination of these two faculties, an ardent desire for truth, for unity with all of existence, the heart aspect, coupled with a sharp, precise, tough mental tool, the capacity for analysis to throw away the garbage, to throw away the dross. This combination is called the Vedantic Buddhi. When one talks about Buddhi in Vedanta, one does not mean some shallow intellectual exercise. It is the combination of this capacity to feel in this deepest sense, coupled with the capacity to have a sharp intellect that cuts away through the obfuscations, through the lack of clarity. That faculty is called Viveka, hence Vivekananda. We'll return to this maybe next week.